After a historic year that marked the first time a former U.S. president has been convicted of a crime, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard takes a look back at Donald Trump's legal battles, the status of each of his different cases, and how the indictments ultimately helped to shape the narrative of his re-election.
For defendant Donald Trump,
Donald J. Trump is guilty.
The fate of the 2024 presidential election could determine both his political and legal future.
They want to put me in jail.
Trump using his own potential imprisonment to rally supporters around his defense.
Our enemies want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom.
As a candidate arraigned on criminal charges in New York City, Washington, D.C., Florida, and Atlanta, where a local Fulton County jail formally booked, fingerprinted, and photographed him for a mugshot that Trump capitalized on.
When I did the mugshot in Atlanta, you know that mugshot is #1.
Trump turned it into a symbol of his fight for freedom, using it for merchandise and fundraising.
Every time the radical left Democrats, Marxists, communists, and fascists indict me, I consider it a great badge of honor.
In 2023, the indictments coming in rapid succession.
I got arrested 4 times in the last... It's almost like I wake up in the morning, do you think they'll arrest me today? I never got arrested before.
Some of Trump's primary opponents trying to benefit themselves from the cases.
We can't keep living with indictments and court cases and vengeance of the past. We've got to start going forward.
That conduct is indefensible, in my view.
But instead, as Trump made his way to New York to face criminal charges for falsifying business records to cover up hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and influence the 2016 presidential election, his narrow lead in the GOP primary began expanding.
It distorted the primary. It just crowded out, I think, so much other stuff.
Special counsel Jack Smith brought 2 cases against Trump in D.C., charging him over his efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss, and another for refusing to turn over classified documents and allegedly trying to hide them from the FBI, leading to federal agents executing a search warrant on his Florida estate.
They raided my house in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. No notice, no nothing. They raided it.
In a separate civil case brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James, a New York judge found Trump and his family company to have engaged in repeated financial fraud, fining him $460 million.
Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal.
A jury in New York also finding him liable for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll and then defaming her.
He's nothing. We don't need to be afraid of him.
Another jury, months later, then ordering Trump to pay Carroll more than $80 million after the judge overseeing the litigation determined that he had defamed her again. As Trump called the prosecutions and lawsuits politically targeted, the justice system continued to churn.
It shouldn't be allowed to happen, so I'll stay around here.
Major witnesses taking the stand in the hush money trial. Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen, the publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, and his former White House close aide, Hope Hicks. Meanwhile, his political allies courting public opinion.
The judicial system in our country has been weaponized against President Trump.
They're not prosecuting President Trump. They're persecuting him.
After 7 weeks, the jury unanimously found him guilty on all 34 felony counts. The judge scheduling a sentencing date for after the election, raising the stakes of America's decision.
We are now projecting that the next president of the United States is Donald Trump.
This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time.
And with the result, concerns about immunity from prosecution and the ability and precedent of imposing a sentence on a sitting president, leading special counsel Jack Smith to drop his 2 cases. Federal judges then agreeing to toss the indictments out, his Fulton County case indefinitely on hold, and the judge in his New York trial now deciding whether to toss the verdict against Trump out altogether or suspend his sentencing date until he leaves office in 2029. Vaughn Hilliard, NBC News.
So, Lumir, I mean, it's a kind of unanswerable question, but one of the things that legal scholars have said to me repeatedly is that the 2 strongest cases were the Mar-a-Lago case and then the January the 6th case. If there hadn't been, and maybe this is one of the big unanswerable questions of 2024, if there hadn't been all of the other cases, do you think it's possible that those cases standing alone, one or perhaps two of them might have had a different impact on the outcome of the result, of the election result.
Yeah, there are so many sliding doors moments here as to what could have happened. I know there was deep frustration in the White House. We reported upon it at the time that Merrick Garland moved slowly even to act on those federal cases, where if the clock had started sooner, maybe those cases would have reached a conclusion ahead of the election. There was a lot of consternation that the Manhattan case, seen as the weakest, went first. But it also did lead to a conviction. And Sam Stein, I mean, there are so many places to go with this. This could have broken in so many different directions. But instead, we remember, a year or so ago when Trump, the historic indictments in 4 different cases, followed by a conviction. We thought his whole year was going to be defined by these legal battles, that it could derail his entire campaign. Instead, 3 of them went away. And the one that did happen, Trump has told people close to him, he thinks it helped because it sort of martyred him in the eyes of the public and motivated his supporters.
Yeah, first of all, I remember the story that you did, and I edited on Garland, and there was so much frustration at the time at how slow and methodically he moved. It's unanswerable about what would have changed if he had moved faster, but it definitely was a feature and a present frustration. In terms of what we're talking about, we were also thinking a year ago this would be the courtroom campaign. How would he wage his run for the office from the courthouse? Ended up being that he leveraged it, frankly. And I think the real lesson from all this is that, say what you will about Donald Trump, but he has one attribute that distinguishes him from anyone else in politics, which is an insatiable perseverance. He will just grind through stuff that more often than not other politicians will succumb to. And he can figure it out. He will just claw his way back in and he will fight it. And then he'll turn it into his advantage. And he did martyr himself by these trials. He did get the rest of the Republican Party to rally around him. And I think if you talk to people in his universe, look, there was a time when the primary itself was uncertain, right? Ron DeSantis looked ascendant. It was unclear if he could win, but it certainly seemed possible. And then what happened was the indictment came down and everyone, including DeSantis, rushed to Trump's side. I think that ultimately Trump managed to to use that and leverage that to the nomination. That changed the course of history.
Yeah, no question there. That indictment may have even ended the Republican primary. At least that's what some in Trump-willed believe. Yeah.